Hey guys, Kaylin at Elba Mill Farm. Today I'm taking part in a YouTube challenge. It's a homesteading challenge, and it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and it's about your gardens. And this challenge was started by CJM Farms, and I think he made his video and then called out his aunt to show the good, the bad, and the ugly in her garden. And then she shouted out some homesteads. And one of those homesteads was my friend Catherine over at Little Bits of Heaven Homestead. And everybody who's mentioned today will be in the description links to how to find them. So Catherine made her video, and when she made her video, she shouted me out, which means now I make my video and show you the good, the bad, and the ugly in my gardens. And then I get to shout out some people for you to check out and hopefully follow. And this lets us do a couple things. First of all, it lets us show you just how bad things can go in the garden and the good things in the garden, you know, what works, what doesn't. But it also lets us build community. And in the homestead community, you may not know somebody, but as soon as you're introduced, you become kind of like family. Like some of these people I've never met, and I would welcome them in my home in a heartbeat, you know, just because you get that close. And so like I said, Catherine shouted me out, and my shout outs, one of them is my friend Christina. And Christina doesn't actually even have a YouTube channel yet, but I did convince her that it was time to start one. She's done a Facebook page for a while and she's done really well with it, and I keep telling her it was time to start YouTube. And so her good, bad, and ugly video will be her first video on her YouTube. But her name is Christina, and she's at Kiska's Homestead. You can find her on Facebook at Kiska's Rabbitry and Coops. But like I said, she's going to be brand new and just starting. Someone else I tried to get to start one, but they wouldn't yet, is my friend Sonia. But she does have Facebook, and she's got Moves and More on Facebook. And hopefully soon we'll get her doing the YouTube videos. And then since I didn't have a second one, I talked to Catherine and asked if she had anybody that, you know, she thought might appreciate a shout out. And she told me about her friend Michelle at Sweet Pea Farm NY. And I checked out some of her videos last night, and she seems like totally my kind of people. The first video I watched of hers was about good news, bad news, and it was about, you know, they had some issues with a goat, and she was very upfront and honest, and I love that in homesteading stuff. Some people have a tendency to show only the good, and so I absolutely adore people who show when things go wrong too, because I mean, it just is part of it. So those will be my shout outs. Michelle, hopefully Catherine warned you that I was going to shout you out. If not, sorry, but do it anyways. But so I'm going to go around. I have quite a few gardens on the farm, so I'm going to show you a few things in a couple of different ones, but I'll show you my goods, bads, and uglies from this season. Okay, so I have no idea if these count as good, bad, or ugly, but they are my absolute favorite thing that I grew this year, and so I felt the need to show them off. This is elephant head amaranth, and I ordered it from my friend Marianne over at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. And you're supposed to be able to eat this. I haven't. I literally ordered this for one reason and one reason only. My brother-in-law and I are in a garden competition with each other, and so far he is winning. So I bought these literally because they look like the plants are flipping you off, and I just wanted to be able to send him a garden picture with all my garden plants flipping him the bird. So that's literally the only reason I got these. I intend to grow these again next year out by the road so that when people drive by they can see them. But if you need these, check out Mary's Heirloom Seeds. Like I said, elephant head amaranth. You can see I've got a little bit of bug damage on them. I've got some beetle issues this year, big time, but that doesn't seem to have affected how cool the tops of them look. And this is the house garden, and I made a video a couple weeks ago because I had gotten sick and things kind of went to crap on the farm, and I made a video talking about, you know, how things went and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really got it back under control, but some things are doing well. This is going to be one of my uglies. I have squash beetles, and I'm not sure if, well, okay, so these little guys right here are the young of the squash beetles. I have found the only thing that works to get rid of these is to pick them off. These are the adults. Let's see if I can move this leaf. These are the adults, and they're actually mating right now. And when there's another baby under there. And normally, let's see if I can find any leaves with it. Oh, so there's a bunch. If you turn them over, you'll see them. And what I'm actually going to do with this one, instead of trying to continue to kill them, is I started some more cucumbers, and I'm going to let these continue to grow because you can see, I mean, I do have some cucumbers on there that are ready to harvest. And I'm going to keep harvesting as long as I can while the new cucumbers start. And then as soon as the new cucumbers are ready, I'm going to burn this to the ground and hope I take out all the adults, all the babies, all the eggs, and just start over. Some people do a trap crop. I've never felt like I have enough time in my short growing season here to do a trap crop, but apparently nature is going to force me to do that with these, and so this is going to be my trap crop. Now, whether or not I'll have enough time to get the new cucumbers up and going, my frost is actually October. The first week of October is my first frost, so I don't know if I'll have enough time to get a harvest, but I mean, there is no saving these cucumbers at this point. So I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. I mean, maybe I'll find that I do have enough time for a trap crop. Maybe I'll find that I don't. But either way, burning this will hopefully at least eliminate the squash bugs from being an issue next year. Okay, I'm considering my tomatoes. I don't know if I can get far enough back to show you how big they are. I'm considering my tomatoes probably my good in the house garden. And the reason my tomatoes always end up so good in the house garden is, you can see they're in a raised bed if you ignore all the weeds. And during the off season, I actually sit rabbit hutches on top of my raised beds. And you can see they just poop into the raised bed. And then at the beginning of the season, when it's time to grow, I run a small little manis tiller through and break all that up and then plant my plants in it. And so that soil is always heavily amended with plenty of, nutrients and everything. And so you can see the tomatoes get pretty huge. These are all like snacking tomatoes, cherries, pears, all that good stuff. And I even actually went through and pulled off pretty much all the suckers, and they're still that out of control. Another good in here, and again, it still has to do with the rabbit poop. This is my herb bed, and you can see how well they're doing. And same thing, they had a rabbit hutch sitting on them all winter long, and then before I planted, I pulled the rabbit hutch off, tilled it under, and got my herbs started in it. But they're doing really well, and most of these should come back up next year in my zone. I think my rosemary will have to come in, and possibly my lavender, but I'm not positive yet. But the rest of them should be relatively okay. I'm in zone 6. The rest of them should be relatively okay out here. This is my front flower bed, and I'm considering it a good and a bad because some things went right, some things went wrong. I actually grow herbs and stuff in this too. Here's some oregano. I've got mint and lemon balm and catnip and some things to make teas out of. But the other thing we do is we try to plant a wide variety of wildflowers and flowers that the pollinators really like, and this did pretty well. My daughter took this over this year, and as you can see, the flower bed actually desperately needs weeded. So I am considering that a bad because, when you take on this much planting, there is a lot of time in the weeding. And so it kind of has to be one of those things you really love doing, because if not, you're just going to spend a whole lot of time doing stuff you don't like. But so this does need some upkeep on it and everything, but it's good because I do constantly, as soon as it warms up, these flowers are completely covered in bees and butterflies and wild pollinators and all that kind of stuff, which helps out. My house garden is on the other side of the house from this, and so that does help out in getting, my kitchen garden pollinated so that my tomatoes and everything is good to go. I'm down in the big garden, and just like up at the house garden where pests are my ugly, pests are still my ugly down here. I have some hornworm issues every single year. And they're just one of those things you just have to watch for them. And the first year I ever had them, I had never seen them in my life. And I about had a heart attack because I had no idea how big those things got. I was under the impression they were cute, tiny little caterpillars, and literally the first one I ever found was like 3 inches long and as big as my thumb, and I seriously about had a heart attack and was kind of annoyed with everybody for not warning me about how big and ugly those stupid things are. But you can see it has, I came through the other day and picked off a bunch, and this might be the first time in my entire life that I'm disappointed not to find one. I was looking for one so I could show you, how they blend in on the tomato plants and, show you how to look for them. But apparently I must have got them all yesterday, so I'm not seeing any. But I'm sure I will find some tomorrow or the next day. So here's one of my tomato plants. And you can see, I mean, they literally just chomp it up. The one that I pulled off, this one, was actually eating this tomato. And you can see, like, they leave poop on it. And so some of the telltale signs, if you're walking through your garden and you see any kind of damage like this, immediately go over and start checking all your tomato plants. Because somewhere in there is a hornworm somewhere. And one of the other things, like I said, look for the poop. It can be green, black. That one's kind of cream colored. But I could see this the other day. I could see the damage on this plant from pretty much the other side of the garden. But, I mean, like, you can see it. You'll know when it's time to start really, really checking close. I feel like there's probably one somewhere on this just because of that one little damaged branch, but I have checked it and I mean, I'm not seeing it. So maybe it just took a quick snack before moving on to another one. I don't know. But yeah, the pests have been my ugly this year, and part of that's because we don't use any kind of chemicals. I pick them off and just hope for the best. And that does mean you lose some, especially if you're not staying on top of it. Probably the good in the big garden, I know it's weird to just love this. At the end of all my beds, I plant, again, more wildflowers. And I think the flowers is probably my favorite thing, just because, it's nice when you're down here working and you can see the butterflies going by or hear the bees buzzing. I've got marigolds, and then along the front of the garden I planted a bunch of sunflowers. And the cool thing about the sunflowers is the birds will come down and eat those, and I don't see any right now, but along the top of the fence there's usually birds sitting, and they come in and they pick out, bugs and stuff. But I think the wildlife is probably my favorite, my favorite good of all the gardening. When we first moved here, I didn't see many bugs, especially not any good bugs. And I'm not super sure if the other farmer, used a lot of pesticides or what, but I've made a point to not use pesticides and to plant, beneficial crops for them, habitats and all that kind of stuff. And it just always makes me really happy, like when I'm digging through the garden and I run across toads or snakes, or praying mantises are probably my favorite. They're just absolutely adorable, and they do some good work in your garden, so they're worth having around. But I would say probably the pollinating stuff is what I would always consider my good, and just the way it brings back the wildlife and everything. And weeds are always going to be a bad. I mean, you just can't even sometimes keep up with them, especially, like I said, when you tend to overdo it. And I got sick, and so that left me kind of out of commission for a while. And in order to fix that, I tried to come in and weed a lot of stuff. Like, you can't tell, but this is my corn bed. It's actually Three Sisters garden. It's corn, and then you can see some pole beans, and somewhere down here, hidden by the weeds, are different squashes. And so this should have been fine, but I didn't get to the weeds. And so you can see how tiny the corn is. And I'm not even sure what I'm going to do this was the same thing, another Three Sisters, and I gave up on it, and I've already tilled it under and planted beans in it because I just gave up. I'm not going to try to fight. I think I will probably end up tilling half of this. The beans are only towards the front, so I will probably till the back half all the way up, and then maybe plant more beans, or I'm not real sure, but a quick crop. I need something quick before my frost gets here. But yeah, so that, the weeds is probably my bad. So it just is what it is. I mean, they're rough. Okay, so that was my good, bad, and uglies from some of the gardens around the farm. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you some ideas on how to fix your bads and uglies if you have them. I hope the good maybe inspired you to try some of those things in your garden. I hope you'll definitely check out all the homesteads and farms that are going to be linked in the description. Check them out. Check out their good, bad, and ugly videos. I know that's given me a whole lot new homesteads and YouTube channels to check out and subscribe to and everything. But yeah, things don't always go 100% right. It just is part of it. And I think probably one of my favorite quotes is, "No garden will ever be as good as next year's garden will be," because I think gardeners are eternal optimists. Even right now, I'm still in the middle of gardening and am totally swamped with everything I'm trying to accomplish with them and have things starting to come in, so it's time to start canning them. But even right now, I am already planning next year's garden and talking in my head about how great it's going to be and what I'm going to do different that I should have done this year. And you know, no matter how many times I fail at this whole gardening thing, I always start again the next year. Even when I swear, you know what, I'm not doing that next year, too much work, I don't want to do it, I'll just buy vegetables from someone else, I always end up planting something. So it's just one of those things. And so I'm super hopeful you enjoyed the video and learned something. And to the people I shouted out, I can't wait to see your all's videos. But yeah, thanks for stopping by, guys. Bye.